while I was going back through college. So I took a nice 16 or so year break from college to join the Army and go teach out there, and then came back. And in doing so, I eventually found my way into technology. And in 2018, I started working at a place called Audible, which is owned by Amazon now. And that's up in Newark, New Jersey, where my current job is too. But at Audible, they were going through this agile transformation. I'd never heard of it. I'd taken one project management class and I thought I knew everything. It turns out they do things a little differently in the tech world sometimes, and that's cool. Oh, sorry, let me take this out of your way. Okay. And we're going to talk all about that tonight. But also, I wanted to talk about what this could possibly have to do with you as teachers. So if you have any questions, understand that I come from a teaching background. My gorgeous wife, Sherry, is in the audience too. She is a French teacher. She is transitioning. She can't work as a teacher anymore for various reasons. And so she's also moving into a new chapter. So, oh, there she is. Hi. So I'm really glad that, through her, I've met Jeff Patterson, I've met Anna Murphy, and then, decided, why don't I offer this? So again, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to sign you up for classes or something like that. Sorry, I don't have anything. This is just let me help out some teachers because maybe it'll close the karma circle of all the bad things I did back in school. So hi, yeah, if you haven't taken the poll already, please do. But let's play another poll. You love these. You put students through them. When you hear the word agile, what comes to mind? So give me a one-word answer or a sentence or whatever. Thanks for coming out, Natalie. Appreciate it. Movement. And you can put it in the, if you want to use the app, you can actually use this on your phone too. It lets you send emojis and stuff. But if you start putting it in on the app, we will form a word cloud. I'm not making it do this. It's magical. Project management. There's an interesting one because a project is something that usually, well, according to the Project Manager Book of Knowledge, has a start date and end date, has a timeline, has a certain order things have to happen in. And so it's, yeah, while this is a type, oh, ninja, you're absolutely right. Ninjas are agile. They can like dodge bullets and stuff. What else? Movable, quick. Very good. Okay, I like these. And some people think, more the Dungeons and Dragons side of like, it lets me dodge arrows. And then some people think more the high school football side of like, oh, it lets me change directions really fast when I'm running through tires or, somebody's trying to tackle me at 300 miles an hour. And I like some of these other ones. Somebody mentioned a process. Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, Cynthia. We're going to get into that in a sec, what that has to do with anything. So back to I'll leave that up. Keep playing if you want. But I'm going to move back to the slides here. So what do we talk about today? Basically the what, who, when, where, why, how of agile, of what it means, and why you should be able to just strut into an agile job someday. Not too long from now. So what is it? So I loved your answers. They are absolutely correct. And I've seen some interesting ones over the years of asking that question. So I love how creative you all are. So this one has a capital A, and you'll keep seeing it with a capital A. I assure you, I didn't make a mistake. It is a proper noun because in this case, agile refers to a certain project management or product management or service delivery philosophy or mindset, just a way to think. So that's what is that mindset? It's a set of guiding principles and values through which you can build these products and services. So, that's what companies do, right? They build products, they build services, they sell them or they deliver them. And they do that through iterative development. And iterative is like an iteration, meaning a cycle. You'll see a lot of times if you just Google the word agile and you look up like Google image search, what will you see? You'll see lots of arrows pointing in circles. They're referring to the fact that this is cyclical, it's iterative. It's like when you teach a semester or a quarter, or sometimes, because sometimes you're one of those people who only teaches a half-year curriculum or 3-month curriculum or something like that. Each one of those is an iteration. At the end of it, you evaluate, right? You look back at what did you learn? What went well? What went poorly? What do I want to change for next time? If you were a computer science teacher and you ask the students, hey, what did you like? What didn't you like? They're like, well, maybe you should get a textbook that's not from 1981. You're like, oh, okay, good roast. You got me. You're like, maybe I should really update that. And then you do for the next time. That is iterative development. And that is iterative development through customer collaboration, talking to your customers, who in your case were students. Sometimes they're parents, whatever, but students generally. So what does this give us? This gives us the ability to create, respond to change well, ultimately succeed in this thing that we call a uncertain and turbulent environment, which is the world after 2020. Many of you didn't think you'd be transitioning. We certainly never did. And here we are, because we're in an uncertain and turbulent environment. We are learning to respond to change. And that happens to be one of the values. So if I want to talk properly about this agile thing, I'm just going to get into the history of it for a minute. if you've ever taken a business course or you've talked to a business owner or something, you might have heard of these things. Like, these are what you need to run a good business. You need the right processes and tools. People are interchangeable. You can always train someone new to come in and do the job. But as long as you have the right processes and the right tools, you can't fail. You got to have thorough documentation. You got to have a way that people can read the frequently asked questions or read the troubleshooting part. Like, why should you have to explain anything to them? Why do you want them calling you and asking questions and interrupting you when they could just read a document somewhere? Just send them the help manual or send them to a help website or something. You got to have the right contracts in place. You know why? Because why are they going to keep paying you to do something if you don't lock them into a contract? You remember how that happened when you bought a cell phone in like 2005? They would put you in a 2-year contract, even if you bought the phone outright, even if you paid for the phone all on day one, and you're like, I've completely paid it off. Why do I have to agree to keep giving you money every year for 2 years? And they're like, why? Because otherwise we'll charge you $250 for breaking the contract. And you're like, okay, you got me. They thought that was a good way to run a business. And then finally, following a plan. For the longest time, we thought following the plan was the most important thing, where they'd say, you got to have a 6-month plan. You got to have a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan. Every year, you got to reevaluate your 5-year plan and adjust your 5-year plan. You got to stick to it no matter what. Don't deviate from the plan. And you were supposed to, what were you supposed to do if something ended up going wrong? Are you supposed to just be like, oh, well, at least I followed the plan, right? You're proud of me, right? It's not my fault anything failed because I was just following the plan. So that was for a long time how things were run. But around 2001, a bunch of software developers were like, hey, I noticed we're not really following the rules that they taught us back in school, and yet we're doing really well. And they're like, haha, yes, why are we doing so well? I wonder, why are we? I noticed I too am doing so well. So they got together, they went on a ski trip. That's what you do. And they wrote something. They wrote a document that weekend, and they called it the Agile Manifesto. And that was the historic moment in, again, 2001, where they said, we noticed that we value certain things more than what we were taught to. So for instance, we value individuals and interactions more than we value processes and tools. So that's like when we stopped being such a world of the Industrial Revolution, where everything was about factories and production and logistics, where it was about creating the same thing over and over with minimum defects and minimum deficiencies and that kind of thing. Instead, what are we creating now? We're making things like mobile apps. We're making things like software. We're making things like new marketing campaigns, viral marketing, things that didn't exist 10 or 20 years ago in the way that they do now. So we can't just make the same thing over and over. You can't just take like, oh, what did Coca-Cola do last week? Let's copy their ad campaign. It'll totally work, and just slap our label on it because we're Pepsi or something. It doesn't work that way. You can't just keep recreating the same thing. If you were, then you're not adding any new value. You're not adding any business value. You might even be adding negative value by causing copyright infringement or something like that. So we now value the individuals. We recognize that individuals are all unique. They've all got their own experience, education, wisdom, and background, and talents and everything else. And we have to recognize that we're not really making physical products anymore. We're making intellectual products. So something like in Anna's world, where they make a marketing campaign, maybe they do something with like social media campaigns, maybe they do something with product development and so on. That is an intellectual activity, not a physical activity. They're not hammering things together and seeing how it looks, or like building it out of clay like we did in the old days. They are using their minds. And so we need individuals to do that, and we need them to interact. You can't just hire someone who's really good at what they do and then say, okay, now go sit in your corner for the next 6 months and work on it, and then come back to me when you're done, and I'll tell you what I don't like. That's not a way to run a business. That's not going to work. We need interactions between those individuals, because that's where ideas actually happen. This synergy idea of like 1 + 1 = 3, it really only happens when we interact, when we are able to have conversations, when we're able to do them informally. They don't have to be during a meeting and so on. So just like group projects teach more than a solo project would, we value those individuals and interactions more. Are processes and tools still important? Of course they are. They're irreplaceable. Like, how many of us could get a job if we were like, I can't use PowerPoint? Like, it is a process / tool that we need to be able to use. So you wouldn't be able to, no matter how valuable you are as an individual, I don't think you'd stick around long in any job if you couldn't use that process or tool. It's just we value the individual more than that. So the other thing is, we value a working product or working service more than we value thorough documentation. So by that, we mean, why not just have it work in the first place so that they don't have to read through a user manual or go through like a 700-page PDF or go online and Google like, how do I How do I copy a slide in PowerPoint because the button's not there anymore? It used to be there, now it's not there. Like, why not just make something that works, that's intuitive, that's accessible, considering that people have different needs? Make all that first instead of giving them a big document on how to fix problems that arise. So we do value this more. And then the next one is we value customer collaboration more than we value contract negotiation. So like before, in the case of the cell phone companies in the early 2000s, charging you for the privilege of using their service and punishing you if you left. That is not what customers actually wanted. What customers actually wanted was, good service, reliable service, affordable service, and that kind of thing, and the ability to pick up and leave to somewhere else that had that service if they wanted to, had better options if they wanted to. So contracts are still important, they're still irreplaceable, and that's fine. Like, they always will be. But they should never take the place of finding out what a customer actually likes and so on. And then the last bit is what we've all learned since 2020 is that valuing responding to change is probably more valuable than following a plan, because we don't really get to follow plans very often. Yeah, we still have to make plans. We still have to submit lesson plans and get them approved and everything else. However, if no one's actually watching you, you don't always stick to the lesson plan, and that's fine. You only do it during an eval. But same thing, like, how often do you really get to do that? How often are plans realistic to what you're going to do? So setting up a mechanism and building in the ability to respond to change is far more valuable than just following a plan. Those are the values. Those are the 4 agile values. There's also 12 principles. We're not going over those because they don't say anything that you haven't heard already. So let's talk about the differences. Project management versus product development and service delivery. So traditional project management, this was something like in a software company, the CEO would say, hey, I want to make a mobile app. And they'd go grab a project manager and they'd say, hey, you're going to make me a mobile app. You're going to work with all these different departments, go out and get it done. And they would go talk to a subject matter expert, and they'd also pull in like a business analyst, this BA. And together they would make a list called the requirement sheet. And the requirements would have the complete quote unquote what of the product. What are they going to make? What does the customer want, and what are they going to make? They then take that requirement sheet, go talk to an architect. The architect would figure out, yeah, can we really do this? Can we really pull this together based on the current technology in the world, based on the staff that we have or the staff we can afford to hire or whatever? But when they're done with that, they would hand it off to the development team. They'd be like, here's your sheet. And they'd say, thanks. And then they wouldn't really talk again unless they had a question, like something was vaguely worded. They'd be like, wait, I don't understand this thing on the requirement sheet. But in general, they took their orders from that requirement sheet. So that's the development team. They're done making the thing. They hand it off to the tester. The tester finds a bunch of bugs. The tester spends a lot of time fixing those bugs. And then finally, after lots of quality assurance testing, they hand it back to that. The SME comes down, does a little chutes and ladders, comes down for user acceptance testing. That's saying, like, I gave you a list of requirements, so it's up to me now to determine whether you've met those requirements and whether a user would actually pay for this, because is it what we say we're providing? If all of that went well, you end up with a product at the end. Yay. So this is a little foreign to some people. So what's it like in school? Well, remember, we've got the ADDIE model, that same ADDIE, the same analyze, design, develop, instruct, evaluate. So generally, like, let's say somebody wanted to make a new thing. Like I said, in the 1980s, we started teaching computers in schools. Suddenly they were everywhere. How did we do that? We needed textbooks, we needed curricula. So somebody had to go and say, like, let me get a subject matter expert on computers and talk to an educational analyst, something like that. We couldn't just sit the kid in the room with them. That's how you got like 14-year-old hackers looking through the Pentagon files or something. So we needed a way to instruct them properly and safely. And then they would talk to somebody who does the design. You can see here, I'm just doing the ADDIE thing. And then someone would instruct it. And then there'd be some kind of evaluator evaluating the instructor. Same thing as before, except realistically, it's probably just you. It was somebody said, hey, I want you to teach computers, go research it. And then you would go and do that. So that is how project management traditionally works. And that's the steps that generally go into it. One of the things about how you organize a company in that is you've got different departments. We could say this is the marketing team, this is the development team, this is the UI team, user interface team, this is the advertising, this is the accountants, these are the lawyers, and so on. They're all in their own little cells. They've all got a manager. And if you want to get something done, you have to go to each one of these to get their little piece of the project done, which means you have to go through their manager. So you're the project manager. You're responsible for the project as a whole, but you have to be able to hop around to all these different teams, work through their manager, find people who are available to help you, and so on. And if you want to go the route of becoming a project management professional, which is fine too, I'm talking about them tonight too, because they definitely have a use, just like agile people do, and getting a PMI certified. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. One way to think about this is like, these are, let's say we all work together at a rainbow factory. Our company makes rainbows for a living. Sometimes we make them on like a little piece of paper. Sometimes it's like a business card. Sometimes we have to paint a rainbow on the side of a building. But either way, every time a rainbow needs to get done, a project manager has to carry that colorless rainbow and say, hey, red department, I need you to draw some red lines. And the red team would find someone is available and they would scribble the red lines. And they go over to the orange department. Hey, orange team, I need you to draw some orange. And they'd say things like, you're allowed to use 3 crayons because it's a really big piece of paper today or something. And you have this long to accomplish it. And if you don't have the red crayons or the orange crayons, here's how much money you're allowed to spend on getting them and so on. That's the kind of thing that they would do. And eventually you end up with a rainbow. And we call these siloed because everybody is closed off from each other. You've got a department, where each person, everybody on the team is just one specialty. So the silo refers to like a wheat silo standing in the middle of a farm. You can't see what's going on inside. If you're inside, you can't see what's going on outside. You have to go through like a single door or get a single person to help you through it. And that's what we refer to. You'll hear this like, oh, don't be siloed, or we're too siloed. You'll hear that a lot in business. And that's where that's all coming from. Nowadays, what we do in a more agile environment is we have these what we call cross-functional teams. Why not take everybody and stick them on one team? And I don't mean like a 500-person team. I mean 10 to 12 people on average. It can be 5 to 13, but in general, it tends to be 10 to 12. Now we can have that one marketing person, that one web designer, that one clinician, doctor, whatever it is. Like if you're making some kind of app about medicine, you could have them all on the same team, all working on the same thing, all pitching in, and they're cross-functional, not just that they have lots of different roles, but we all start learning from each other. People can jump in when they need to. A business analyst can help with testing. A developer can help with ironing out the big list of requirements and that kind of thing. We all start learning from each other. Even if you're not a computer person, it doesn't matter. Like if you're marketing or a doctor or whatever, you can jump in and help with user acceptance testing. You can go pretend to be a user and see if the thing works. So that's how we do it now. And that way, it's a lot easier to make decisions. It's a lot easier to make changes, and it's a lot easier to respond to change and so on. So who is the team? So like I said, they're cross-functional, again, 10 to 12 people. It's a team with people who serve lots of functions, but sometimes they also serve each other's functions. The longer you're on an agile team, the more you learn about other people's jobs and how to do them and how to fill in. They are what we call self-organizing. So they have leadership and they know why they do what they do, but they don't need to be told how. They don't need to be told what tasks to do first or what subtasks to do in order to do those tasks. So they're not micromanaged. They're very self-reliant. And if the boss has to leave for 2 weeks, nothing bad happens generally. Like they know what they need to do and they get it done. They're stable. And this is like a way of rethinking portfolio and capacity planning. Why am I throwing these words out? So a portfolio is like a collection of different products that all work together. So like when you go to, for instance, I work for Prudential. So if you have Prudential Retirement, maybe you could check your retirement account on your app, or maybe you could do it on a website, or maybe you could do it by calling the call center. Those are all different products within the same portfolio of retirement. So what we do in an agile sense is we don't shift resources. And by capacity planning, I mean, like, how are we going to have enough people? What capacity can they handle of work? Well, what if we stopped selling retirement one day? We said, we're not going to sell retirement. We're only going to sell retirement for people in the metaverse. This new Facebook virtual reality thing. Like, we're only going to sell retirement for people who have jobs in the metaverse, and we're going to pay them meta coins or something. I don't know. Let's say, I know I'm bad at terrible examples, but let's say that was it. Well, we wouldn't just be like, well, you're all fired. We got to go hire new people who can do this. Instead, we will keep the team together and we'll move them to a whole new product. Or what if we got out of retirement entirely? What if we were like, we're only doing investments from now on? We would sell off the retirement business, but we would keep our people and we would move them to an investment thing. And they'd be like, but we don't know anything about investments. I've only done retirements for the last 20 years. Doesn't matter. We will still take you all, teach you everything about investments. You got a couple weeks to research it, learn it, and then come up with a new product together. So that's why we say stable, is they move from product to product together. We would rather keep the team together and take them somewhere totally new than to scatter them to the winds again. They're generalizing specialists, which goes hand in hand with being cross-functional. It's like, there's no just like, well, that's not my job. That's not what I was hired for, so I'm not doing it. We all jump in and help wherever we can. So you become a specialist. I mean, you're already a specialist in your own field, but then you also decide to start learning other people's within some parameters. I mean, it's not like your first day, you're going to be like, I'm going to do nothing but develop from now on. No, we hired you to be like, a subject matter expert or a marketer or something like that. we still need you to do your job within some parameters. We'd love if you start learning these other things and start pitching in. That's cool. So that's one way we run it. They deliver value in these small chunks. They focus on what's going to bring value first, instead of thinking about like, let's do a 6-month project and when it's done, it's going to be great. Or let's do a 5-year project. When it's done, it's going to be great. We think more like, what can we get done in 2 weeks? We've got 2 weeks. We got this many people. How will we pull this off? And another thing about being quality driven is normally when you do a software project or whatever, you're making a website or you're making a book or something, you find a lot of mistakes at the end. That's why editors exist. That's why testers exist. Like new bugs come up, new errors come up. So that would be really abnormal. That would be an extreme outlier in an agile project because they test all along instead. They do this quality driven, this test driven development instead of waiting till the very end to do it. So this would be like if you were having a house built, you could have, on like home and garden TV shows, how they do the big reveal at the end. But instead of that, what if you were there every day with the blueprints in your hand and you could look at the final product and you could say, actually, I don't like the kitchen there. Let's move it somewhere else. Redo it. You could make that pivot much easier if you don't wait till the end to do it. Fact. What else? We're lean. We don't tolerate waste. Lean comes from like the manufacturing world. So we didn't make that up. It's just, that's what it means. It's like there's no extra anything, no bloat. We're open and honest in that we have lots of transparency and communication. We have no trouble admitting that we made a mistake. For one thing, we have no trouble admitting that we don't know something. There's none of this like imposter syndrome because you don't have to pretend to know something that you don't. It's much better to say, I need to plan for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to spend 25% of that time researching something I don't know about because I just don't know it. Like you can't possibly know everything about your business, about the world, and so on. So we are very transparent with that and also transparent with other people's mistakes. It's much faster that way. And we're fun. Yay. We have a lot more motivation, productivity, better work-life balance. Work is a lot more like a game sometimes, and that's kind of cool. All right, more about this team. So these are the questions, the what, when, why, where, how, and so on. So the product owner isn't actually like the manager or anything. They own the product. You can think of them as a small business owner in a way. If you owned a small business, you could, let's say, what do we want to do? What do we want to sell? Let's say you're selling cookies. You open a cookie shop like Insomnia Cookies, the one that delivers till 4 a.m. You decide you're going to sell cookies and that's your business. You're a small business. It's what you've always wanted to do. You retire from teaching. You finally open that cookie shop. You're happy. Someone comes in is like, you should start selling milk. And you, as the small business owner, have the authority to say no or to say yes. You could say, oh, that's a great idea. Cookies and milk. I never thought of that. Or you could say, milk? Why would I sell milk? It's a cookie shop. I don't want a refrigerator. Get out of here. You, as the small business owner, have that authority. So the product owner, they can even say that to their business. So for instance, if we had in our case, it's a retirement app or something, and somebody from the business is like, what would be great? You should add Facebook to that so people can share their balance on their Facebook feed. That would be really hip. And the product owner, again, could say that either that's a great idea or, that gets into all kinds of regulatory compliance, local, federal, state finance laws, and I'm not going to do that. Thanks. You have that authority as the product owner. So that's pretty cool. That's what the term means, really. It's like a small business owner. And then they all may tell the team, here's what I want done, and here's why I want it done. And then the team figures out the how, because the team knows more about that. The product owner probably doesn't have the same background as everybody on the team, or even most of the people on the team, because in there you've got computer people, you've got business people, you got creative people, and so on. You've got special subject matter experts like legal experts or medical experts or whatever else you need in order to make your product. So there's no way nowadays that a manager can know more than all of their people. For a long time, we thought that was the thing, but that's not really the thing anymore. So what's a Scrum Master? This is what I am. I'm a certified Scrum Master and a safe Scrum Master. It's confusing for some of you because you've seen a lot about like customer success managers as CSMs, but in our case, it's certified Scrum Master, which is one of the frameworks. But what is Scrum? So Scrum comes from rugby. It's a term in the rugby game where if the ball goes out of bounds or like some of the rules got broke and there's like a timeout and they resolve whatever they need to resolve, afterwards there's something called, they're like, call a scrum. So both teams come together, each one making a pile of their own team. And then the ball goes in the middle. And then their job after the scrum is to all get their hands on the ball and try to push it downfield and to score. So the Scrum idea of business is different from the old relay race idea of business. In the old days, it was like we would hand something off, like we said before, throw it over the fence, and you can't see what happens to it after that. And just like in a relay race, once you hand it off, you're done, right? You don't have to do anything for the next 2 weeks if it's a 2-week long relay. We'd rather have everybody pitching in wherever they can, no matter what your position is on the field normally. You're still going to pitch in and help with that. So anyway, the Scrum, that's where Scrum comes from. Scrum Master, it doesn't actually imply any kind of hierarchy or management role or anything like that. What it means is it's like a Zen master, somebody who's mastered Scrum and helps others achieve mastery of Scrum. So that's where that comes from. Okay, so anyway, what do they do though? They're just facilitators. They're like coaches. They're not actually a member of the team. They're not out on the field playing, but they are watching, they are helping people improve their game and so on. And they run some of the daily and weekly and bi-weekly ceremonies. We call them ceremonies, like the daily stand-up meeting, which is where every day we get together for 10 to 15 minutes and we say, what'd you do yesterday? What you gonna do today? And what blockers are you facing? We take turns doing that as a room. It lasts only 15 minutes. If it runs above 15 minutes, we're like, too bad, it went too long. We do this in order to minimize the amount of meetings that we need to have. Everyone on the team walks in knowing, here's where I stand, and then they walk out knowing, here's where we stand. So that's the point of that, and that's something the Scrum Master runs, along with other things like after action review, kind of retrospective stuff I'll get into later. And then the tech lead is just somebody on the team who's a little more senior, and we specifically promote them to the tech lead position because everyone else can go to them for answers. So if they've got a little more experience, a little more know-how, they just naturally get to move into that position. You put them all together, you get something like this. Like if you were a football team in Richmond, like here's the team owner and here's the team coach, and then here's somebody on the team who's become a lead because they've worked a couple of different positions on the team and now they move up. Okay, so more about each role. These are things I picked some of the really good ones that you might be interested in going into, depending on your own unique personality, talents, drive, everything else. To summarize, this product owner, they take input from the business and they take input from the customer. So they're the voice of the customer, basically. So they're the ones who say the customers want XYZ. I want you to make it happen. Sometimes they're also the voice of the business, but we usually have somebody who's a business analyst for that, who does all the equations with like, how much money is this going to cost us? How much money do we expect to make off of it? How much money have we been making off it, and doing things like business analytics. But the product owner here, their job is to be that voice, and they have to prioritize according to business values. So they can't just put in things that they think will be cool. It has to be things that they think will add value. And they are one person because two people is chaos. They're responsible for something called a backlog. A backlog is just a list of all the stuff we need done eventually. They're also responsible for what we call user story priorities. So user stories are an interesting way to tell somebody to do something. So instead of, they follow a format, by the way, which is like, as a blank, I want to blank so I can blank. So if I had a user, if again, I'm at the cookie store, I might write a user story as like, as a user, I want to be able to buy milk in a jar so that I can dunk the cookie in it instead of a bottle. That's like as a blank, I wish I could blank so I could blank. That's a user story right there. I hand that off to the team. They figure out how to get milk in the jar and everything. I don't have to tell them like go buy a jar and make sure it's this size and whatever. They can figure that all out because they know what the customer actually wants. And if it was an actual business, I might say something like, as a retirement app user, as an app user, I want to be able to log into my account using Face ID because somebody invented Face ID and now all the companies have to catch up and add it in. It doesn't tell me like, oh, you have to go call Apple. You have to go get this framework in place. You got to like get all these technological documents from them. You got to test it out. You got to add a new server, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't say all that. They know what to do. They figure out how to do it. I just tell them what the customer wants as the product owner. So they also are the ones who accept or reject if something's truly done. And that's because they set that definition of done. We call it DOD for short. They add things like what we call acceptance criteria. So even though they gave a kind of vague job of like, as a customer, I want to blank so I can blank, they also will set acceptance criteria like Face ID doesn't take longer than 2 seconds, might be one of the acceptance criteria, or it's successful more than 95% of the time, something like that. So what else? They're knowledgeable, they're empowered, they're engaged. So that means they they have to be able to hold a conversation. It doesn't mean they have to be able to be a lawyer and a doctor and a computer programmer and so on. They just have to be able to hold conversations with them. They're empowered to make their own strategic and tactical decisions of whatever their product is. And they're engaged in that. They're sitting next to everybody in real life. And then if it's online, they're making themselves available all the time for conversations. So co-located as much as possible with the team, having their butt has a seat at the table too, and you can just reach over and ask a question. You don't have to go through some whole process of like a hierarchy and contacting a manager and whatever else. So they need their ear to the street, their finger on the pulse, and their butt in the seat where they can be found. So the stakeholders are people in the business who have an interest in that product, or sometimes they're sponsors. They're like, I'm the one who funded this project, and so I want XYZ out of it. I want this kind of result out of it. They help manage those expectations of what's actually going to be in it or not. And then they are a cheerleader sometimes. They got to motivate the team and celebrate success, which means they have to do the opposite too, just like you. They have to call out failure so people can learn from it. Let's have a quickie poll. I've been talking too long. All right. Is a Scrum Master a product manager? What do you think? So if you could direct yourselves to ahaslides.com/agile poll, throw me some answers or some emojis. I love the emojis. There you go. Thank you for the laugh. Meh. Yeah, so now you know how your students feel when you make them do these polls, right? I know you've suffered through them at every like professional development day and that sort of thing. Getting a lot of no's, that's interesting. Not a single yes. Okay, so they have similar roles. Thank you for the single yes. That's funny. It's not necessarily wrong either. They have very similar roles. It's their final goals are kind of the same. It's just how they go about it is very different. So when you look at the origin of that project manager book of knowledge, the PMBOK, which some of you, it might be a big part of your future. It tells you what you need to do, but it doesn't really tell you how to do it. Sorry, I forgot to put my cute animations up earlier. You still have to do things like financial management and managing expectations and facilitating team building and team meetings and that sort of thing. It tells you that in the PMBOK, but it doesn't say how to go about it. While being a Scrum Master, they focus more on the soft skills, those interpersonal skills and those business skills, and they're trained in that. So they're on the right track. So it's just, their goals are pretty similar. It's how they do it is really different. Can you take a project manager and just shoehorn them into a Scrum Master role? Because some companies do this. And the answer is, well, my answer is they need to qualify first. They need to go through some kind of certification training. And that's just because I can't be a project manager without some kind of project management certification either. I have to go through the Project Management Institute, the PMI. And the other thing is to consider is, would they even want to be a Scrum Master? Some project managers became project managers for very specific reasons that have nothing to do with being a Scrum Master. So it's a question of, are they strong on the soft skills and on group facilitation and that kind of thing? Are they patient with people? You have to be patient to be a Scrum Master because you ask a lot of questions and you wait for people to come up with answers. Sounds like a teacher. Are they strong on just the tools and that sort of thing? Or are they strong on like reporting to executives? Are they better at being a team builder? It really depends on what they would want to go into. So many project managers are a natural fit for it. You'll find they walk around like part rock star, part ninja. I don't know. They're pretty cool project managers. Scrum Masters are all about, like, that's all they do is people and charts in a way. So it's like, you never have to report up to somebody. You don't have to go to board meetings or something as a Scrum Master. It's kind of different there. So it really depends on what your passion is when you get into business. Is it more tied into building a team, managing a team, or is it more tied into managing tasks and breaking them down and managing projects and that kind of thing? So here's the comparison. Some of you might want to become project managers because you're just a natural fit for it. Teachers, it really aligns well with what you do. You've been doing lesson plans for all these years. You can leverage that. You can convince any company that I can manage a project. You should see what I could do with a curriculum and that kind of thing. What do? They make lots of details up front using things at the task level. They break things down to the task and subtask level, like Microsoft Project Professional. I don't know what the other ones are called anymore because there's so many out there, but they use these heavy project management tools. A lot of upfront planning. They might engage like key subject matter experts, find out like what kind of resource managers there are, what kind of resources are available for estimates. They might contribute estimates themselves. They come from somewhere called the PMI. I'm just going to put all these up because I'm getting lost here. The Project Management Institute. That's a certification authority if you want to become a project manager. And that's like after you take a college class. in project management. So if you want to become one, you could actually just take one class, go to community college and take one project management class, and you're on your way. And then you could become you're not quite qualified yet. They want you to have 3 years experience, but there is a qualification you could get in that 0 to 3 year range. And I'll cover that in the last slide. What else do? They manage tasks. They hold weekly status meetings, that kind of thing. They inform you what's green, what's red. They might visit team members at their desk to find out, like, what's up with this task? Why isn't it done yet? Or what's the status? They take care of addressing any major team issues. We call them accountable because they're for success and failure. One of the jokes within their business is they call themselves the final ringable neck. Which leads to micromanaging a lot, lots of command and control stuff where they're like, I need to be in control because it's my neck that's on the line. I need to decide what you're going to work on next and when to get it done by and that kind of thing. They might be involved in daily decisions too, things related to requirements, the architecture, other aspects of the project. Is it going to get done? Is it not going to get done? Should we keep it in scope? Should we say that we can't deliver it or what? They have more experience with something called waterfall development, which I'll really illustrate well in a couple of slides. And they use a lot of acronyms with the letter P for project like this. You'll see like PMP for project management professional. That's a pretty high up one. PMI, some of these little PMI ones are like, you could get these just with one college class or something like that. You'll see a lot of those tagged onto their thing. All right, I got a direct message question I wanted to read off here. It was, I was a PMP 15 years ago. Job change influenced me to not keep the project management professional. Now I'm retired. I happen to be in my 60s. Good for you, sir. Impressed. So what's involved in Agile/Scrum Master? Maybe it's too late in life for me. Thoughts? No way, dude. You're awesome. You're going to be great at this because you've got the people skills, you've got the experience, the life experience, and so on. No, you don't have to know a lot of skills. It's really just a 2-day class, and I'll get into that later. But like, okay, first of all, soapbox here. Diverse teams are strong teams, okay? Because every company has customers from all over the socioeconomic background, racial background, cultural backgrounds, and so on, the age spectrum. So age is absolutely not a reason to stay out of one of these. They need companies, any good company recognizes that that their customers are not all clones. They're not all one generation. They're not all one, race, whatever. So definitely need more people. And I'll get more into what's entailed in it later. But yeah, I'm rooting for you. I hope you become one. Add me on LinkedIn. We'll talk later. Okay. So speaking of those Scrum Masters, I'm going to answer his question now. So what is a Scrum Master? They're responsible for facilitating the process. We often call them process facilitators. Think of them as just, well, what's facilitator mean? You Spanish teachers know it really means to make things easier. And that's what we do. We examine the process, we look at it, we help improve it, and so on. So their goal can be summed up by answering the question, did I create a high-performing, self-organizing team? Or not? If I did, then I did a good job. Is this team capable of, like, if I leave for 2 weeks, can they just listen to the PO, the product owner, and figure out how to make things? Can they understand what the product owner is looking for? Can they turn those requirements into a backlog, break it into easy chunks, put them in a priority, and so on? Or will they fall apart if I'm not here for 2 weeks? So another thing they do is they remove impediments. So sometimes don't just look for them once a week, because sometimes impediments come up every day. I'm glad to hear that, sir. Somebody direct messaged me and said, thanks. Okay, so add me later, like I said. Okay, so every day in these daily stand-up meetings that we talked about, where you're finding out, where do we as a team stand, looking for major and small impediments every single day. They find ways to remove waste and so on. They help the team inspect and adapt through the retrospective. You've all done this. You've gone through like after action reviews. Sometimes you call them postmortems. I love that. Sometimes you call them like a lessons learned, a center for lessons learned kind of thing. And at the end of any project, at the end of any semester, any curriculum, any side thing that you're working on. But in Agile, we do this every 2 weeks. We run a retrospective generally. They are what we call servant leaders. So a servant leader is like, instead of being a boss, instead of telling people what to do all the time and telling them exactly how to do it, instead, what does a servant leader do? They say things like, how can I help you accomplish what you need to get done? And that's what we want all leadership in Agile to turn into. Like even the vice presidents and the CEOs and everything else, they become servant leaders over time, because they, instead of being task managers and judging people by their ability to complete tasks, they become people developers. They become process improvers. They become better leaders. And part of that is being a servant leader. This is a fun one. We call Scrum Masters information radiators, because putting a chart in front of a team works. I don't know if it works as well with kids, but it works well with adults. When they see what they need to get done and see how their chart isn't going well or is going well, it's a good thing either way. This could be an electronic chart. It could be a physical, big piece of paper chart. It could be on a dry erase board. Things like what we call burn up charts, or like the top lessons that we learned last time. We put those in a chart and see if people are still complaining about them from retro to retro. We put it either, on their computer or in front of them somehow, and it really works. They protect the team. So a lot of times what happens in a business is somebody comes along and is like, I have an idea for a project and I'm pretty high up in the company, so I'm just going to go grab a developer. In fact, Memorial Day is coming up. I want to do a Memorial Day sale on chocolate or whatever. So they grab that individual away from whatever they were doing. The developer's like, help. And then they make them work on this little idea that they had. And then, unfortunately, that developer now has to go do all their own work too. So a Scrum Master protects this from happening. They might say things like, you can't come in here and grab my people. You really can't. Like, I know you're somebody high up in the company. I'm going to have to stand up to you, and I'm not letting you take them, because that person has working agreements with everyone else on the team. And if you take them away right now, then they're going to let the rest of the team down. The rest of the team's going to have to fill in for them. And, they're not keeping up their agreements that they've made as a team to always put the work first and that kind of thing. So no, you're not taking my people. I will help connect you with somebody who can help you, or you can come talk to my product owner. We will definitely put it on my backlog, because it's only March 8th now. We've got time to make a banner for your website before Memorial Day. I can't have somebody leading to do it right now. We'll put it on our backlog and we'll prioritize it. And we'll be glad to help you later. Just reading the nice direct messages. Thank you. Someone's saying, don't let age stand in the way. Of course not. I didn't get into this till I was in my 40s. Like, until then I was teaching too, and going back to college and everything else. Yeah, that would never affect anything. They need people. Like my company too. They've got a couple Scrum Master positions up for hire right now, and they need people. They don't care about, what generation you're from or something like that. Anyway, you'll see some of these things. It was funny. I was looking for SSM and CSM, what's that? Safe Scrum Master and Certified Scrum Master. I happen to have those two. When I typed those in, somebody from my company came up, which is the funniest thing. But anyway, there's another one here too called the PSM, which is Professional Scrum Master. There's 3 levels of that. We'll get into those a little bit later, but that's one is taught by the SAFE framework, which is Scaled Agile Framework. That's what SAFE stands for, SAF. So they call it SSM. And then CSM is taught by the Scrum Alliance, or scrum.org. And then the last one is Professional Scrum Master. That's actually taught by the Project Management Institute, the PMI people. They've decided they can make money selling Agile as well as traditional Waterfall project management. So those are some, certifications you can get into. Here's a real simple way to look at the difference between the two, what we call Waterfall. And I'll explain Waterfall on the next slide. But traditional project management versus Agile project management. So in traditional project management, and yeah, we call it Waterfall for short. It's not an insult or anything. Everybody says it. You've got something called the scope. When you've scoped out something, it means, you've looked at it. So figuring out the scope of a project, like just how big is it? What does it entail? What kind of resources do we have? And so on. Or like, what are we going to deliver actually is what the scope is about. So in Waterfall, you are required to deliver a certain amount of stuff, the scope, and that's fixed. We can't change that. This is what the customer wants. This is what we've agreed to deliver. That's fixed. What's more estimated, what's more flexible is how long we're going to take to do it and what kind of resources are we going to need. So in other words, how much is it going to cost? How many people do I need? Do I need to hire those people? Do I need to contact HR and figure out how to interview people for this job that we've never hired people for before? How much are we going to pay them? How much money is that going to cost us? Are we going to need to buy stuff from the outside, and so on and so on and so on. So anyway, that's these things are a little more flexible in traditional Waterfall management. What's not flexible at all is the scope. What we do in Agile is coincidentally flip it upside down. And so we say, we're going to build something called a time box. A time box is a box made of time. It only holds a certain amount of time in it. So in our case, we usually do 2-week sprints or 2-week time boxes. If it doesn't fit in there, it doesn't go in there. So if we can't get it done in 2 weeks, it goes in the next time box. Sometimes there's reasons for that. Sometimes we have too much going on. Sometimes it's too big of a job. We need to break it down into multiple time boxes. But anyway, we just call them sprints for short. So we have a fixed duration, this cycle, this iteration, and then we have a fixed amount of resources. We know who's on our team and how many people we have. Maybe they don't know how to do the thing, and so we'll build some time in for them to research how to do the thing. But what's variable in our case is the scope. So we say, we've got this much time, we've got this many resources. How much can we get done in that time? We commit to that, and that's what we deliver. So that's the main difference. If you wanted to screenshot one slide that answers both of these, and I was talking to someone on LinkedIn about this earlier today, one of the comment threads about the difference between Waterfall and Agile. That is the start of the difference. The fact that one is upside down and the other's not. I won't say which. Okay, Waterfall management. We call it Waterfall because you've got, it falls downward, it flows downward. You've got a bunch of phases. You got to complete one phase before you can get to the next one, and so on. So you got to finish your analysis before you can make a plan, do that before you can start designing the thing. You can't build it until you're done designing it, and so on. Why else is it called a waterfall? You can't make it flow backwards. If you want to make it flow, if you want to start over, you can't just go back a little bit. You actually have to get off the ride and go all the way back up the top. Why? Why not just take one step back? Why not be flexible? Well, let's say we were building cars, and 1 out of 10,000 times the engine would die when you turned it on. That's pretty bad. That's pretty tragic, And so what if we had done the analysis? We said people want cheap cars and they want fast cars, and we're going to build a cheap and fast car. It's called the Tesla or something. We start making a plan, with the analysis. We're like, where are we going to get the money from to build this thing? And how much is it going to cost us? We start making the plan. We're like, we're going to build a factory here, there, and the other place. And here's all the people we're going to hire, and here's how long it'll take us to make, and so on. And then we start designing the actual car. And then we start building the car. And then somewhere around here, things start going wrong. We notice that 1 out of 10,000 times it breaks. That's a terrible record. But it used to happen with cell phones too. Remember when I have a Samsung, but remember when they used to burst into flames sometimes. So at some point, the testing might reveal something bad. So here's the human psychology part that doesn't really work with Waterfall, is if you're the one who discovered this, how likely are you to be the whistleblower, to be like, I want to just let you know, boss, that the last 6 months are totally wasted. We spent all this money and time and resources. We could have been doing something else. We could have been making money. We invested everything into this, but it's not going to work, and we can't sell it because it's going to be a disaster. Or are you going to be the person who's like, maybe it'll all work out somehow. It's not up to me. Maybe I'm wrong about my test. Maybe it only fails 1 in a million times. That's not our fault. So a lot of times people are willing to look the other way or check off on the test box because they don't want to be the one to give the bad news. They don't want to be the wringable neck. And so the thing gets deployed, it gets sent out there. So what do you get at the end of this? You get one big product. This could have taken you 6 months. It could have taken you 2, 5, 10 years, whatever. Sometimes the product is great, and sometimes it's a disaster. You don't really know. In teaching terms, this is more like, remember, you've got your Addy up there. But let's be honest, there's that other hidden step there, which is to suffer. Okay, so that's Waterfall. That's basically how it works. You have to do one before the next. You can't skip any steps, and you can't change midway. It's very difficult to pivot, just like it's very difficult to move the kitchen after the house is built. It's a lot easier when you've just got a floor and you're like, I don't like it over there. Let's build it over there instead. Okay, so as opposed to Waterfall, which again, you get one big product at the end. It could be good, it could be bad. In Scrum, this is one of the frameworks of Agile, and I told you where the name came from before with the rugby example, but instead of having an analysis phase and a whole plan to make a perfect product, instead we say we want to make a product that could do X, Y, and Z and a bunch of other letters. And here they are. They go into something called a backlog. So backlog isn't a bad word. It doesn't mean you're running behind. It just means this is the stuff we eventually want to add in. And then every sprint, we take a couple things off that backlog and we're like, these are the 4 things we're going to add into our product in the next iteration. So there it is. There's our sprint. During that time, we are building, measuring, learning, adjusting, or maybe we're doing all those words we said before. Maybe we're doing analysis, design, develop, instruct, and learning from it. I get to do that because I only have to teach, 3 classes a week or something like that. I get a lot of feedback and I can make adjustments because I have a lot more prep time than you do. But anyway, the iteration during that, we're doing, that says daily stand-up, 10 to 15 minutes. Every day we're doing a little daily stand-up. And then that is just answering those 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? And what problems are you having? It's a peer-to-peer sharing. And the sprint itself, in the business, it takes 2 to 4 weeks, but most people choose 2 weeks. That's kind of the optimal length because for math reasons, 2 weeks is 10 business days. Each business day has 8 hours. So you can very easily say, okay, we've got 80 hours. How much with 10 people can I get done in 80 hours? It makes the math so much easier. And also to be like, oh, it's Thursday. We are 40% of the way through our sprint. So how much have we gotten done? Have we gotten 40% of the work done or not? But anyway, after the iteration, you've got some features. Like they were backlog items, they were just imaginary, but at the end, you've got these features. They go into your product, your minimum viable product. So after every cycle, you're adding this thing called the minimum viable product. Now, again, this isn't a joke. It's not an insult. It is a real thing. The minimum viable product is something that has the minimum amount of features in it to be able to still sell, make some money, but also to get some feedback. So if it was like my banking app, I have Bank of America, and back in like 2008, I chose Bank of America because they were literally the only bank in town. I was living in Arizona doing the Army school thing. So I noticed they had a banking app and they told me about it. I was like, cool. All I could do was log in and check my balance and log out. 2 features. That was it. Nowadays, what can I do with it? They've added lots of things over the years, lots of new features through successive iterations. And what can I do now? I can do Zelle. I can send my kid money at college. My kid loves it. Or I could do, I could do like Merrill Lynch investment, whatever, check my investments or add investments, probably buy crypto coins. I don't know. They've added all these features in over the years, little by little. They didn't say like, we're going to make a banking app someday, but not until we've already got all these things. Like it can do all the things. Why didn't they do that? Because it would have been a waterfall project. It would have taken much longer, and they might have made some terrible decisions along the way. Like maybe here was that joke I was saying about like, I want to be able to share my balance to Facebook so I can show off how rich I am. Like that was a feature somebody might have suggested, and they might have put it in, or they might have said that's a terrible idea. Either way, even if it made it in, they could take it out next time and just not use it anymore. What you end up with at the end is a much better product in a much shorter time, because you've been taking those customer insights, you've been constantly getting their feedback and putting it into the next cycle. So as your project grows, it evolves, and it evolves in a good way, not in a mutant way. So at the end, you end up in a much shorter time, you end up with a much better product, basically. Ding. Okay, 2 compelling reasons a tech firm should adopt Agile. So this doesn't mean it works for everybody. It doesn't work for car manufacturers necessarily. Why? Because they need to make the same thing over and over, and they have to pay off all the research and stuff that went into their thing. Waterfall works really well in Amazon warehouses. It works really well in like factories and that kind of thing. It doesn't work as well in tech. So here is a little bit of data, pretty data. There's this IT consulting firm. They're called the Standish Group. They've been around since the 90s. So from 1994 to 2015, they do a study every year, and they call it the Chaos Study, in all caps, CHAOS. And what they find, they ask 2 questions. They're like, what was your last project? Was it Agile or Waterfall? And was it successful? How do you know if it's successful? Well, they measured on 3 critical constraints, which were the timeline, the scope, and the budget. So yeah, the cost, basically schedule, cost, and scope. Same as teachers. Like, how do you measure success as a teacher? It's your ability to produce results. How do you measure your own success versus how does an evaluator measure you versus how do parents evaluate you? Who cares about them? How do you do it yourself? It's your ability to produce results on time. There's other considerations like budget that you don't have to worry about as much, because let's face it, you pay for everything out of pocket. But in business, we have to say, did we deliver it on time? Is it what we agreed to deliver? And did we go over budget on it, and that kind of thing, to label it a success or failure. So sometimes it doesn't meet one of those quite. Maybe it's like the product was delivered on time, but it was a little over budget, or vice versa. Like maybe it was on budget, on time, but it wasn't quite what we promised to deliver because we couldn't get it done. So anyway, you see the success here, the big orange one, is 42% of the time with Agile. Nothing to really brag about until you look at Waterfall. So Waterfall in the tech world isn't, and especially the ed tech world now, I'm sure, as many of you are interested in going into, Waterfall is only successful 13% of the time. So that's, you're all teachers. I don't need to tell you what that translates to. Imagine bragging. Imagine your admin being like, we have a 13% graduation rate. So yeah, not going to happen. Now, this might not be convincing, and it might not be very interesting, but also PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, they're another consulting firm, and they have a lot more syllables than the Standish Group. They, in 2018, said Agile projects are successful 28% more of the time. And so when you're the person with the checkbook and you're trying to decide, do I want to invest in an Agile thing or do I want to invest in a Waterfall thing? There's a lot of compelling reasons to go with Agile, and senior management, senior leadership and stuff tend to buy in on it. Okay, so there's your charts. The big takeaway there is 28% increase in success rate if you go with Agile in a tech thing. This is something from extreme programming. I want to show you a couple of tools like the Kanban board and stuff. So in extreme programming, let's say we had a list of stuff here. It's a list of stuff to do. It's our backlog. and it's written in user story format. As a user, I want to be able to log in with Face ID. As a user, I want the web page to load in less than 2 seconds. As a user, I want to be able to share this event with friends, whatever. So they put some sizes on it, and I'll get into these in a slide or two. They decide how big of a job each thing is, how important it is. But actually, this isn't very interesting. Let's talk about something a little nearer and dearer. So my wife Sherry's in the audience, and one time she had to decorate a door. Ding! It was a door decorating contest, which she won, by the way. So we helped with that, though. So here we go. Here was our list of stuff to do. It was like download a high-res image of Van Gogh's Starry Night, print out the 24 of them, tape them together, use glitter paint on the stars. It was on my finger for weeks. Apply some clear coat over the whole image, tape it to the door. And that was like one of many parts. But wait, what happened here? Why am I telling you this? This doesn't make any sense. This is a very project management way to do it. I'm giving you a list of tasks to do and subtasks, things that enable the next task and so on. So that is how a project manager would go at it. But as an agilist, I would go at it more like user stories. I would think about, what does the user want to see? Who are our customers? So our customers are the judges, the parents, the students. That's pretty much it. So it might be something like, as a judge, I want to see themed artwork on the door, because that's what they told us. They want it to be themed. My wife was a French teacher. Of course, the Eiffel Tower was in there. As a parent, I want to see my heritage represented. Okay, parents have a good point sometimes. As a student, I want to see my name on the door, but I don't want to just like spray paint it. I want it like thematically mixed in there somewhere. So we're telling them what we want done and why we want it done, but we're not saying how to go about it. It's up to them to figure out how to organize, how to swarm, and figure out how to do it. But how do we size these things? How do we figure out their impact? We do a little bit of sizing and prioritizing. So here's the easiest way to describe it is we use t-shirt sizes sometimes to figure out how big of a job something is. So in project management, you would probably do things like work hours. You would say like, this is going to take 4 hours or 8 hours or 100 hours to build this wall in this building that we're building. And they're able to do that because they've done it for a long time, and they talk to construction experts or whatever, and they can figure out sizing that way. We don't really know because we're doing something that hasn't been done ever before, and all the time we're doing that. So one of the things we use is either the modified Fibonacci sequence or t-shirts. So if it's a Fibonacci sequence, you'd be like, this is 1 story point, 2 story points, 3, 5, 8, 13. And then we stop it there, and we actually go to 20. And generally you don't go to 40 or 100 because there's no way you're going to get something that big done in 2 weeks in a sprint. But anyway, we usually just do 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, with each one being the size of the 2 prior to it for the math teachers. So it's a good thing to remember when you're doing the small, medium, large, and so on. Thank you, Jordan. Take care. And where to catch the recording later. So, and everyone, I'm sorry if I'm running over. I ramble a bit, but we've only got 7 more slides. Okay, so small, medium. In this case, we don't think like a medium's twice as big as a small, a large is twice as big as a medium, or something like that. We think it's like small plus medium equals large, medium plus large equals extra large. That's how we figure out sizing. And then for priority, I am not getting political. It's an acronym, MSCW. We use it to remember must have, should have, could have, or won't have. If it's a service, we would say it's a must do, should do, could do, or won't do. And that is how we prioritize things, and that's how we size things. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. So something like, as an admin judge, I want to see themed artwork on the door. We decided that's a small job because we're just going to, print out the artwork. It's not like we have to paint the Sistine Chapel or something. We're just printing it out, taping it together. It's a must. As a parent, I want to see my heritage represented. Well, that's a medium job because we have lots more heritages. It's not just one piece of art. We decided that this was the smallest thing. It was the easiest thing. Some of these are even easier. They're pretty poorly written. That's my bad. But something like, I want to see my name on the door. Ooh, that's going to take a while. I've got a lot of names, and we got to put them in thematically. Like we got to make them, each one gets their little present, or maybe when you open the present with a certain nationality, all the students who identify in that nationality are listed there. As a judge, I want to see only recycled plastic materials. And that one, they were like, well, this only counts for 1% of your judge score. So it sounds like a pain. We're calling it an extra large. And we decided that's a could have. It's something that's, it'd be nice to have, but it's not truly necessary at this time. A should is something that like, maybe we could find a workaround, or maybe we can include it. I don't know, but a must is like, yeah, we got to do this. We got to include that. It counts for a lot of our grade or something. As a student, I want to be able to safely touch the door. That's a small must. And then as a judge, I want to see materials that won't damage doors or handles. So I can't use nails or, actually, I can't rip the door off and put something else there or whatever. Easy enough. So here's how we prioritize. Once we have that information, we put it in a matrix. This is called the Eisenhower matrix. And what we're going to use is similar to it. You can see here, it's like if something's not important and not urgent, we put it down there. If it's important and urgent, we put it up here. We modify this a little just to make it friendlier and more inclusive, I guess. So we use the 4 quadrants, but we put the effort on the bottom. So we start with the extra large effort this way and the extra small that way. And then the other one's going to be how much impact is it going to deliver? How important is it? Like how much business value you could look at it. You could look at it as like, how much are we going to invest down here versus how much is it going to return up there? And so when we took all those things before and I've numbered them, I can now, let's just exit out of presentation mode and start doing some dragging. So I've got like a small must for this first one, small. I go to small, I drag it up to must, and I start populating my chart. I got a medium should here, medium should. I got a large should. I have to look around my microphone to see it. What's this? Extra large could, cacao. I want to be able to safely touch. Okay, small must. And then I got one more small must. And so what's beautiful about this, now that I've populated my chart, is we can all see it. We've all done it together visually. A 5-year-old could, oops, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. I got to switch my modes here. You're looking at the wrong screen. Swap. There we go. Okay. What I love about this, what this really brings to you is it helps you deal with the pesky interruptions. So let's say you get that email from the admin and they're like, it seems that some teachers, you were told before, you've got 2 weeks to do this door decorating contest. And then suddenly you get an email from admin that's like, it seems that some of you teachers misunderstood and thought we had 2 weeks. The judging's actually in 3 days. We apologize for the inconvenience if you misunderstood and got the date wrong. And you're like, well, dang, I had 2 weeks of work planned. Like, how am I supposed to squeeze it all in now? We can look at it as like, what if we had 2 weeks planned, but now we only have 1 week? All we got to do is cut this chart in half right here. We say everything to the right, we can still get done in a week. Or, it's important enough that we need to get it done. If we've only got 3 days, we're probably going to rip it somewhere around here and say, these are the things that we're going to focus on instead, the things that take the least effort and deliver the most impact. So it's a really intuitive and visual and collaborative way to prioritize together. And I highly recommend it. It's one that you can practice, with anything. Just figure out those t-shirt sizes, how important it is, and so on. Okay, and then you end up with this, ding. So that was the prioritization matrix. Let's talk quickly about the Kanban board, and then I've got maybe 2 more slides, and then I can open up for questions. So thank you for your patience. So Kanban, there it is. I don't know if there's any Chinese speakers out there, but the words are literally kan and ban. It's pronounced the same way when you take those kanji over to Japanese. What does it mean? Kan means to look at something. It's a hand over an eye going like this. And then ban is the board. It's a board's a tree split in half is a board. And, a board that you look at is like a bulletin board. And that's about it. So when we call it a Kanban board, as dumb Westerners, we're actually saying it's a board. And there's your trivia in case you ever happen to hear it in day-to-day life. This is something where if you're not able to plan 2 weeks at a time, if you're not able to make a time box, if you're not able to know what tomorrow holds for you, because lots of stuff is going to come pouring at you all the time. There's always fires to put out. What you do is you put those fires in a backlog, those new items in a backlog. This works really well in every tech business, in like customer service, tech support, that kind of thing, because you don't know what today is going to hold or what today's going to bring, these surprises. So what do you got? You got this backlog. You're going to take a couple of them. You're going to say, you know what? These 4 are the highest priority and they're the smallest. Like for 20% of the effort, we can deliver 80% of the importantness. So let's do those first. We put them in our to-do list, and they might be something like, you're back in college. Sorry for the nightmares if you're still having those, in which you had a group project to do. Somebody's got to write the summary. Someone's got to caption some pictures, write a bibliography. And then we start moving things over to the in progress column. So somebody's making a blog post about it. Anna's got to make the tweet promoting the blog post. Brant's going to move the picture 1 pixel to the left. Sherry's going to write the compelling and beautiful intro and summary, because she's a writer, by the way. And that's the truth. Okay, and then she's going to write our methodology page. Cinna's going to Google 5 free cat pictures that don't have licenses. We're going to put them in our thing. I'm going to translate the news headline from Chinese because I know like 3 words. And then somebody's going to make the 1 chart per demographic metric. Anyway, what's happening here? We could see over time, again, if it's 2 weeks into it and everything's still stuck in the in progress column and nothing's done, we can glance and be like, okay, we got a problem. If it's 6 weeks into it and it's due on week 7, we're going to be like, we really need to get some things moving. I need to go chase down Brant and Anna and so on and find out what's going on. Why aren't things getting done? So that is the use of the Kanban board. It helps you visualize the workflow. It helps you visualize how work flows through your process. And it also helps visualize how the workload is balanced or how it's terribly imbalanced sometimes. But either way, it's a really useful tool. And again, it's something that at a glance, you can just look at it and know what's going on. And it's something that anybody can do. You can do, they teach 4 and 5-year-olds to do this too. You've got chores to do, just give them the big list of stuff that needs to be done and then have them have them prioritize and start deciding what to do first. And then they get to do the thing where they move it over. Maybe you could put a bell on it next to it on the wall. And when they move something to the done column, they get to ring the bell. I don't know. It works really well on adults. Probably works well with kids too. But that is the thing with the sticky notes that you see in every TV show about Silicon Valley and stuff. And Daniela, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, there's a couple of apps. Like I've seen, the ads anyway for Monday.com and ClickUp and I don't know what else, but I tend to just use PowerPoint because everybody has access to it for free. But within our business, we've got apps that we use too, like Jira. But yeah, tell me more. And Sharmila, I'm so glad to hear that. That's really cool. I'm glad that you came, and I'm glad I included the bit about project management. Madeline, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely Trello is one of them I've seen too. Okay, let's play a game. Anna, you feel like coming off mic for a minute?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a jolt. So a jolt is just a 3-minute or less kind of non-topical thing that gets people thinking. I'm going to pull up a stopwatch. Yeah, I'm going to make you suffer through this one. So don't say awesome. Are you a multitasker, Anna? You pretty good at it? Are you?
I try.
Oh yeah, you're pretty good at it. You think so?
Well, we'll see.
Do me a favor, and let's say first, you're gonna count to 26. I'm gonna run the stopwatch while you do. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Do I count out loud?
Count out loud, yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3,
fast as you
4,
can.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26.
Nice. Just under 8 seconds. Give me the alphabet whenever you're ready.
Okay. As fast as I can. Okay. Yep. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z.
And I see some mouths moving. That's great. Y'all can play along at home because the point stands. Last one is I want you to tell me the colors of the rainbow. You don't have to say it 4 times. 1 time is enough. All right, ready?
I don't even think I know them.
Go for it. Whatever you got.
Red, yellow, green, blue, purple.
Mm-hmm.
Am I missing one?
There's orange and indigo and violet, but close enough.
I don't know my colors very well. Okay.
I thought you were like a design person. Okay, so no, you're a marketer. It's totally different. Mm-hmm. Just like people think you're advertising or something.
Yeah,
no, it's totally different. It's a very small part of marketing. Okay, I want you to multitask this. I want you to give me a number, a letter, and a color. And then the next number, the next letter, the next color. I've given you 2 of them there to get you started. Okay. I just want you to get up to number 7 and whatever number and color goes with that. Whatever letter and color goes with that.
Okay.
Okay, so it took you 15 seconds to do all these. I'm going to start the clock over. Ready?
All right. So 1A red, 2B orange, 3C yellow, 4D green. This is really hard. 5 E blue, 6F indigo. Okay, I was almost there.
Oh, actually, you got it right. Go ahead. One more.
Oh, 6F indigo, 7G violet.
Yes.
Okay.
Why did it take you so long?
There was a lot to remember and think
through. A lot to remember, but you already know it. There's nothing to remember. You counted at 26. It only took you 7 seconds. You counted the whole alphabet in 5 seconds. Why was it a lot to remember, though?
Because they were all from different groups.
Yeah, we hate change, right? Mm-hmm. As humans, we hate change. So when we've learned something a certain way, it's very difficult. But what you're experiencing is this horrible thing we call fractured thought, where you already knew the answers, and yet you had to keep context switching between the 3. And teachers, feel free to torture your kids with this anytime. Multitasking doesn't work. You're terrible at it. Everybody is. It's much better to monotask, to work on one thing until it's done. You, in 24 seconds, only managed to get through 7 numbers, where you could do the whole alphabet in 7 seconds, but it took you 24 to only get through 7 for some reason. In fact, you did all 3 of the things in 15 seconds the first time, the whole alphabet all the way through. You counted to 26, you did the whole rainbow, and yet we could only get through 7 of them in 24 seconds. I timed myself doing this the other day. It took me 2.5 minutes to get through the entire alphabet. Why?
Wow.
When I could do the 3 in a row. Yeah. Oh, good night, Kat. Yeah, I'm sorry you can't stick around. I hope you catch the video later. So, you're terrible at multitasking. Everybody is. And so in Agile, we recognize this, and we believe in monotasking. We want people to stick with one thing until it's done, because your brain goes through more stress when you have to switch tasks. Teachers can't help it. I know you have to multitask all the time. If you were able to stick with one thing until you got it done, you'd have such an easier life. And so that's something we want people to be able to implement too. So that's one of the practices we'd love to see you look into. So great job, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you for volunteering for that, whether you knew it or not. So some practices people might want to look into that have come out of Agile. And the reason I'm mentioning these is because if you're going to get a certification, you're going to want some experience as a Scrum Master or a project manager or whatever. So you all, those of you who are still working as teachers and looking for a way out, you can use that time to implement these and put them on your resume, put them in your interview, have a great conversation about how eye-opening it was to see like when students were forced to multitask versus not, or when students were put into a self-organizing team and told like, here's what I want done and here's why, and you figure out how to do it versus not. You have a way to farm up the experience. If you're not still teaching, yeah, you can still pull this off with any nonprofit effort. Like what I'm doing now, I'm just going out and speaking about my expertise to people. It's a chance for professional development too. I can go now and tell this story at my next interview and be like, hey, I was talking to this group of teachers the other day, and here's what I learned when we started talking about Agile stuff, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, you can find opportunities to start implementing them. And if you don't want to talk to anybody, that's fine too. Start doing them in your own home. Number one is the Pomodoro technique. If you haven't heard about this already, it is the one where you work for 25 minutes, you take 5 minutes off. So while you're working, lock your cell phone up. Don't get distracted at all. Only work on that one thing. Don't multitask at all. So work on that one thing for 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. Repeat this 4 times and you've made it through 2 very productive hours, and then you get a longer break. You get a half hour off. And then you repeat it in the afternoon. So basically in those 4 hours, you do it 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, you will get way more done than you normally get done in 3 days. Check it out. It's all over YouTube and TikTok and whatever else you watch. Stop multitasking. You suck at it. Monotask well. Kanbanize your life. Make the chart. If you want to do it with your kids, with doing chores, that is wonderful experience for everybody. It really cuts down on the yelling that needs to happen if you can have one of these in the house and have the team self-organize. And also doing daily stand-ups with people really cuts down on the yelling later, because it helps you all get in that mental space of like, this is what I need to do today. Like I have goals and I tend to forget things. And so if I talk about them in the morning, first thing I wake up in the morning, I say, here's what I did yesterday, here's what I'm going to do today, and here are the challenges I'm facing, or the blockers, or the impediments, or the dependencies I'm facing. But either way, just answer those 3 questions with somebody you care about. If you don't have somebody you care about, give me a call. We'll do it over LinkedIn chat. We'll do daily stand-ups. But anyway, start doing those. Get that experience in any way that you can so that you can start realizing the value of it and you can start talking to it in an interview. Speaking of which, this was supposed to be about getting a job, but instead I turned it into like an Agile evangelist session. So how do you get a job in this thing? Now would be a good time for you to start researching those roles, because there's no role that's just like, Agile, Agile professional or Agile specialist or something like that. Maybe there is somewhere, but that's probably a company to run away from. They're more looking for like Scrum Masters, product owners, business analysts, that kind of thing. So you'll see this on YouTube. People vlog about their life as a product owner or Scrum Master all the time. Those have been really valuable to me, because what do? I teach for a living. I turn around and I teach this content to other people. So why would I make it all up myself when I can watch a lot of more experienced people on YouTube talking about it? I've never worked as a product owner, so I have to rely on the stories of others to turn around and tell. So the reason I advocate the most for the Scrum Master role, in addition to being one and bragging about it, is because it's really geared well toward transitioning teachers. And it's the best entry point for getting into Agile. So you're all leaders already. You're all facilitators already. You're all process improvers. You're all people developers. So hit rewind, go back and break that down and put it on your resume. You've done all those things. The only weird thing is you might not want to get involved in this at all. You might decide that you're much more geared towards being a project manager, and that's fine. Go that route. I did decide to include them. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Like it's just a different, one's this way and one's that way. That's it. That's the only difference. One isn't better than the other. They both have their uses. So if you're sick of people, if you just want to manage tasks, or if you can't get rid of like the waterfall mindset of doing things, then the answer to the question of how do I get a job in Agile might be don't get a job in Agile. Go do something in project management. Look into PMI stuff. Because it's the things that you loved about teaching, the things that you're good at. You might not want to give those up. Remember that in Agile, leadership is not about managing tasks or micromanaging or checking up on people to see if things are done yet. So if you're into like leading a self-organizing team of developers and understanding that, most of the time they don't talk to you, it feels like a huge loss of control. It feels like you're not in control. It feels like you're going to get in trouble because you're not in control enough and that kind of thing. It's a bad feeling at first. So if what we said about the Scrum Master versus project manager slide, that if you're more into like, I want to do the team building, I want to do the soft skills, I want to do the facilitation, that kind of thing. Or if you're more like, I just want to do reports and stuff. I want to do reports to managers. I don't want to have to deal with cleaning up after a team of developers or whatever, like corralling them or trying to herd kittens, that kind of thing, making sure it all works together. Remember, just one is this way, one is that way. You can rewind back to that slide. It was slide number 20. So if you're more about figuring out, like, I've got a scoped out project, I can figure out what kind of time and resources need to happen in order to do that. Or if you are that way, by the way, you'll do great in construction, you'll do great in fabrication, logistics, factories, that kind of thing. Yeah, and there's a lot of work in all that too. You might even want to just take a project management class at community college. Maybe you can count it towards your PDUs for work, or maybe you can count it towards your PDUs. You can definitely count it towards your PDUs for a project management certification, because you have to have a certain amount of educational hours. They want like 35 hours of training and 36 hours of experience before you reach their highest level. So how are you supposed to get there? Well, you do it by hitting those smaller certs along the way, like the project management ready, what they call PMR, is 0 to 3 years experience is all that requires. Anyway, go to pmi.org, Project Management Institute, pmi.org. It'll talk you through all that. That's fine. And then if you're more into the idea of having a fixed amount of time, a fixed scope, and you want to see what a team full of individuals with lots of different skills and talents and experience, education, wisdom can pull off, that means Agile will be a lot of fun for you if you're more into running things that way. Start practicing, start implementing some of the things that we talked about, because you're going to have experience in them when you get to an interview point, or even when you apply. So if you can convincingly say, yeah, I've tried Agile in my classroom and here's what I found. Here were the good things, here were the bad things, and I learned and I improved and so on. It's being done in classrooms already. And it's beautiful because it gives you more time to do your stuff. It gives you more time to do your prep stuff when you don't have to lecture all the time. When you can say, here's all the stuff I want you to learn today, and here's why. You figure out how to teach it to each other. And then they do that. And then they come in every day, they look at their backlog of stuff they need to learn, and they start teaching each other. And then you're like, I get to walk around and feel like, a servant leader just saying, how can I help you better yourself today? It's a really nice way to teach. It might not pass you on an eval, but the rest of the time, it's like a really great way to run things instead of standing and reading PowerPoints off a slide or whatever, micromanaging people, chasing down the kid who doesn't do his work, that sort of thing. So I'd say start implementing those if you're into the idea of like servant leadership versus being an authoritarian taskmaster. Do some Google research on how is Agile being used in classrooms, because it's being used beautifully and to great effect. I'm probably going to start a business about this sometime with my wife and my sister-in-law. So helping teachers learn how to use it in the classroom and that kind of thing. But for you, you're going to have to start implementing it in your daily life. I know it's radical. I know it's different, and you're already drowning in schoolwork, and some of you are sleeping less than 3 hours a night trying to keep up with things. I hear about it from my wife, my sister-in-law, their colleagues, and so on. But if you invest a little of this pre-work in, it'll majorly pay off later. So even if it's something, maybe you could do it on a weekend, you could qualify in a weekend, take a certification course, learn a lot of skills, it's worth it. Implementing some of those business concepts from the technology world or practicing at home. Either way, you've got chores to do. So find out a way to self-organize around those, prioritize them, and so on. And if you want to break into business, you're going to have some of those success stories. So definitely start practicing, growing, hiring. Well, start growing, because companies are hiring and growing right now too. About getting a certification. It takes 2 days to become a certified Scrum Master or a safe Scrum Master. It's a 16-hour class, 8 hours a day. That's also the most sensible place I find for you to enter the business world with no business experience. There's some cost involved. It's gone down over the past few years. When I first took it, I think it was like $1,000 for 2 days. It was terrible. And now it's like $500 to $700, depending. There are lots of third-party vendors out there who are all licensed by the same certification authority to deliver it. So as the demand has gone down, or, I should say the supply has gone up, the demand stayed about the same. There's whole swaths of Scrum Masters who aren't certified. They've just fallen into the role somehow, or they managed to get it because they knew somebody, that kind of thing, or they were a project manager who was just told, oh, from now on we're doing agile, so go figure it out. So there's lots of people out there, and I'm not supposed to say this, but even at my own company, certified Scrum Masters are the minority. I don't know why. It just happened that way. Some of them who have 20 years experience Scrum Mastering still weren't certified. I don't know. Every company I've worked at was like that. It's even, the Amazon subsidiary I told you about before. So it's probably because just where we are in history, like none of us wanted to be a Scrum Master. They didn't exist when they were born. When we were kids, we didn't want to become one. You worked from whatever career and just ended up in some kind of team leadership thing. And so companies, what they have to do a lot, because they don't have certified people, is they have to hire someone called an agile coach. So the agile coach then has to come in and teach the Scrum Masters how to be Scrum Masters so that they can be coaches. And then the coach works himself out of a job, basically. If the company could skip that because you know the right way to do things because you've gone and gotten a certification on your own, then great. And, maybe you could even sneak it in as some of your PD stuff. Maybe you could even get the school to pay for it. You could say, oh yeah, it's an education thing about managing projects. I want to learn it. And then maybe the school will reimburse you a little. I don't know. Depends on how good your admin is. So anyway, that's what I recommend. And then, oh, by the way, these are the three I was talking about before. The SSM, certified or safe Scrum Master, safe being Scaled Agile Framework. That's whenever you're working with more than a team, 5 teams or more, 50 people or more. You have to scale it up. It's at a bigger scale, so we call it Scaled Agile. CSM comes just from scrum.org or Scrum Alliance. And then PSM, I forget that's the one from the Project Management Institute. They've gotten into teaching Agile too. Very different prices between them. If you get PSM level 1, it's only like $150, but then PSM level 3 is like $500. I don't know. You'll see. Check it out. The last thing I recommend is start attending some events. And I know it's not really safe to go to in-person events everywhere right now. That's not what I'm talking about, because back in the day, we used to have these things called agile meetups. They were a thing. They used to be in person. Someday they will come back to real life, but even so, they do them online. If you can get involved with any of those, you've heard of meetup.com and that kind of thing. It's a great place to network. Tell them who you are. Tell them why you're thinking about getting into Agile. Because one thing we do a ton of in Agile is we collaborate, and we get very energetic about that energy of collaborating, that synergy of like brainstorming and stuff. We get addicted to it. So when somebody meets someone like you who's coming from outside and wants to learn more and wants to see how it can benefit your situation, you tell them, I teach a class full of kids and I want to know how to apply Agile. Watch the spark, watch the spark light up, watch their eyes light up, because it'll turn into this manic brainstorming session. Because again, we are collaboration addicts. We're hooked on that energy. Even if you just want to reach out to somebody online and hear about what the role is like, even the other roles like business analysts or product owners, designers, developers who work in Agile, those, everybody would like to tell you about it. What's with all the don'ts on the page? Again, some of you might land a job without any of this stuff I'm recommending here. Some of you might win the Powerball tomorrow too. I don't know. You might be laughing at me if you do, laughing at the rest of us, but I don't know what'll happen. Some people have managed to get it as a project manager. Some people have managed to get it with no experience, no education, even though whatever they came from was pretty much opposite. It happens. And, because certifications, again, they're not always plentiful. So they haven't really become a requirement for getting a job. But I do, or again, some of you might hate Agile after this presentation and be like, nope, I'm going straight Waterfall for the rest of my life. And that's fine too. So that's why there's a bunch of don'ts on the screen. You've got a choice here, deciding what you're going to be more passionate about. That's the presentation. Okay, I'm Perry Goldman. There's my email if you want to reach out. There's my LinkedIn. If you click on it and you only see a follow button, just click on more and there's the connect button down there. But if you could also just direct yourself, for my own curiosity, to this Agile poll while we're waiting, I would love if you could rate your understanding. And I am definitely opening it up for questions. So I'll just leave that up while I do that.
Well, thank you so much. There's so many things in the chat. This has been fascinating. I'm really appreciative of your time. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in. I know we're over time, so
I've got some DMs to answer too.
Yeah, and you can also email Perry as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sticking around until Anna kicks me out. So you see, some people had to leave. I did get a DM asking, do you have to have tech software development experience to become a Scrum Master? Absolutely not. Because some teams are not into tech or software. Some teams are like, there is Agile for marketing too, and they have Scrum Masters, and they're not necessarily a tech team, or they don't necessarily use tech. Another thing is You only have to be able to hold the conversation. Remember that old mindset of like, if I'm going to manage people, I need to know more about the job than any of them. I have to be better at it than any of them. That's out of date. We don't do that anymore because we know that's not realistic anymore. You can't have more tech knowledge than somebody who got their computer science degree and has been working as a developer for 5-10 years. You just can't. It's not realistic. Nobody can do all that. If you see my LinkedIn, it has a big wacky description at the end about how I'm a full stack developer and an audio video producer and a voice actor and all kinds of other things. I do special effects. That was just because I came up through the instructional design route and I had to learn all those things. It has nothing to do with Scrum. Who do I manage now? I manage a group of people who are funding the transformation of what we do. So anyway, I didn't need all that tech experience. It does help you if you can have the conversations. If you can't have the conversations, then you find someone who can explain it to you and you learn to have the conversations. So you don't have to know how to do their job. You don't have to have that background. You just have to be able to talk about what they do to understand when they're complaining about how something's so difficult or whatever. So that was the first question in my DMs. Oh, there was another one earlier, and I'm sorry if you're feeling ignored. Somebody, here we go. Thank you for their thorough explanation. Okay, no, it wasn't a question. Appreciate it. Okay, cool. Questions. I see Sharmila has a hand up. If you want to come off a mute, come on camera. Well, you don't have to come on camera, but if you want to come off mute or put it in the chat, I'll definitely answer it.
And I'm just going to quickly add, I am going to make you the host. I unfortunately have to run to another meeting. So
West Coasters.
But please keep
All right,
going. I'm going to stop the recording here.
Alrighty.